Welcome to the Built for More podcast. This is for the woman who wants to get the most out of herself in fitness, business, and in life. So if you want to learn the skills, the strategy, and the mindset to get the most out of your body, your mind, and your business, you're in the right place. Welcome back, guys. Today's episode is a really important conversation because I think so many women right now are struggling to figure out whether they genuinely need rest or whether they're just avoiding discomfort. This could be on a day where you're just questioning if you should go to the gym or take a rest day, or maybe it's more of an ongoing fatigue that you're just not sure if you should push through and just keep hustling or if your body is trying to tell you something. Online right now, we're seeing a lot of hustle culture. It's push harder, stay disciplined, no excuses. But on the flip side, we're also seeing things about soft life, slowing down, rest more, and listening to your body. That messaging gets very confusing. The reality is sometimes you genuinely are burnt out and your body needs recovery. But other times, if we're being honest, we're procrastinating, self-sabotaging, avoiding discomfort, or waiting to feel motivated before taking action. So today we wanted to unpack how to actually tell the difference between the two. Lil, what are your first initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, this can be really challenging to differentiate. And I think especially as you mentioned, seeing everything on socials where it looks like everyone's always doing more than you. 9 times out of 10, people aren't posting when they have a lazy day where they watch movies and aren't hitting their step targets. They're posting when they're getting everything done and they're at the gym and then they're going and doing X, Y, Z. But I think something that's really helpful is thinking about the frequency that it's happening. Like if you're feeling like this every single day and then you're like, I need rest again today, and it's the 6th day in a row, probably don't need rest by that point. So thinking about like, when was the last time I took a deload? How often is this happening? Like, is this a pattern where I'm just not getting to the gym and I'm going, weeks and weeks where I'm struggling to hit that routine? Or is this like a one-off or like an occasional thing where I've actually been hitting all my targets and hitting all my gym sessions and everything for months on end, and now I've kind of hit a point where I do actually need to step back because my body is starting to fight against me?
Yeah, and I think when we are trying to achieve something, whether it's in our fitness or our business, like we're always going to hit walls in that journey. We're always going to like push things to the absolute limit. And it's about trying to identify, okay, when do I actually need to take a rest versus when am I just kind of being a little bit lazy? And it's just trying to figure out what that looks like. Let's really focus on like the physical side of things to begin with. So talking about like how our body feels in our training. So obviously deloads are important. So how would you describe when somebody needs to actually take a deload versus whether they actually just need to kind of show up to the gym and see how they feel?
First of all, as I said, when was the last time you took one? If you took one 2 weeks ago, the answer is probably already you don't need one. Yeah. And I know you're the same as me that we generally take deloads intuitively when we feel our body needs it, whereas you maybe powerlifting, for example, it's more structured to have deloads so you can manage that central nervous system fatigue. But symptoms like, are you losing motivation and passion for a gym when you're generally someone that loves your workouts? Are your numbers plateauing where you haven't been able to hit PBs for a while? Maybe they're even going down. You feel your strength declining. Are you starting to feel like you're getting sick or injured more frequently? Are you finding that just in general not enjoying the gym? And we're all going to have times where motivation dips and flows, but if you're generally someone especially who loves the gym, I know for me when I go through that phase, I think, okay, this is probably time that I might need to change things or step back, because I know that I usually love the gym, and if I'm going to the gym and just hating it, probably something needs to change.
Yeah, 100%. That is a big one. And I had that conversation with a client recently, actually, where she was exactly like that. She's like, I think I just need to stop gymming and just like run and hike. And I was like, no, I think you just need to take a deload actually, and then you'll love it again. And literally she did. She just needed to take a deload because we hadn't had one in a while. I think other signs would be things like if you're not really progressing in your strength at all, that's often a big sign that you do need to take a deload, or injuries and niggles keep coming up. That's another sign that you probably do need to take a little bit of a deload, or even struggling with sleep is a sign of overtraining, and maybe things have just kind of caught up to you, even if like your objective load across the week isn't overtraining when you haven't had a deload in a while. Like our nervous system just gets a bit fried, basically. So we just need to pull back. And a deload can be like 3 to 4 days completely off training, or it can be a week at a very low output, low volume training. There's so many different ways to run it. And I know different coaches have like different approaches to that. I usually like 4 days completely off for me. I feel like that helps me to reset. And nothing bad actually happens to your body when you take 4 days completely off the gym, as much as a lot of people fear that it will. It's such a good reset. And for me, like I much prefer that than going in and just like doing a fluffy session or doing one working set. Like I would rather actually just have a few days off. I feel like that works best for me. How do you prefer to deload?
I'm the same. I prefer complete rest because I find it really challenging to not be like, okay, fine, I'll go for a PB.
Yeah.
So I generally line it up with holidays, to be honest. Like I remember once I went to Bali for 6 days, and a lot of people, you absolutely can train while you're on holidays. But I think, generally I might go on a trip for myself like once a year. And I'm like, if I have 1 week off training, it's not, considering I'm switched on for the rest of the year, it's not going to be the end of the world. And 9 times out of 10, you come back from that and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually stronger and I feel rejuvenated. My body feels brand new because it's actually had that time to rest. And sometimes you can always line it up with a new program as well for the cherry on top. We're like, oh, I've got some new exercises in here as well. So I'm the exact same. I generally prefer complete rest.
Yeah. And look, lining it up with a holiday is great if you can, but I think it's also important to keep your mind open to the fact that sometimes your body decides when you need a deload, and it might not line up with a holiday, but you don't need to feel guilty around taking a deload just in like an ordinary week and having a few days off the gym. And I think that's the trap that so many women get stuck in. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation on this podcast. Is it's that guilt trap where people are like, oh, I can't rest. Like I'm just being weak if I take a rest day, or like my body is going to change if I take a few rest days. What would you say to someone that's feeling that way?
I think understanding that it takes a lot more than you think to lose muscle. It's not just going to fall off the bone and disintegrate in the air, and that we grow when we're resting. If you're not fully recovered, you're just adding more stress to the body, and it is really important. And I think I also have done deloads, and I'm sure you have as well, like during comp preps where you think like, oh, during a comp prep, it has to be 100% switched on. Like, you're adding volume, you're adding cardio. But when you're getting that feedback of like, I'm extremely fatigued, maybe they're holding a higher weight, and you can see like that's not because things are plateaued, like you're holding inflammation. Like let's maybe pull cardio for a few days. Let's maybe strip back your training volume. And then all of a sudden they start responding. They have a new life in them as well. So knowing that sometimes you need to pull back before you can move forward.
100%. And especially if you get sick, whether in prep or not, you need to rest if you get sick. And I am pretty big on this when a client messages me and they're like, oh my gosh, Bec, I'm sick, but I'm in prep. What do? I need to get everything done. To be honest, you actually can rest even if you're in prep. And more often than not, it's better to do so, because otherwise, if you don't and you try and just push through, then you often just prolong how long you're sick for, or you could make it even worse. So a lot of the time what will happen when we get like cold and flu, it's like an upper respiratory infection. And then if we don't rest and we keep pushing, it actually moves down to like becoming a bronchitis, or maybe like a throat infection, or it will start to move down as a secondary infection. And that's when often it will become like bacterial. You need antibiotics. So it's a slippery slope. Whereas if you just rest the first couple of days and get on top of it, then you don't have to deal with all that secondary stuff that comes from not resting when your body actually needed it.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most common questions we get, especially probably now coming into the winter. I've already had a lot of clients message me, even lifestyle clients, that they're sick. What should they do? And I generally have a rule, like if you feel like it's maybe like sniffles, for example, a little bit of a head cold, maybe just go a little bit lighter at the gym. Like if you feel generally fine, you just feel like you're maybe coming down with something, and you want to train still, sure, maybe strip it back a little bit. But if it feels like, really headachy, maybe you're developing a fever, it's looking viral, like it's just not worth it. Because would you rather take maybe 3 days rest or 3 weeks because you've then pushed yourself to the point that you're absolutely just under stress and your body needs even more time to recover? And especially if you are a comp prep client, when you're already like in a deficit with potentially a compromised immune system from a prolonged deficit and higher outcome expenditure, then you're not in the best position to heal anyway. So sometimes you just really need to rest in order to be able to get back into things.
Yeah. Another way to look at that as well, if you're sick, is if it's above the neck, then you should be okay to train. Still take it easier, like go lighter. And if it's below the neck, like if you're starting to get like full body aches and like fever and maybe something really chesty, that's when you're best to actually rest. So that's a good way that you can kind of look at that as well. On the flip side, let's talk about when you actually just need to get up and get things done, even when you don't feel like it.
I think all good things require discomfort and a bit of compromise. And I think, as we say, like if it was easy, the obesity epidemic wouldn't be a thing. Everyone would be, fit and healthy and achieving their goals. It's not going to be easy. So it does require a little bit of, choosing your hard, getting outside of your comfort zone. So it is, as I said kind of before, is this something that is repetitive and week after week you're saying, I'm going to start on Monday, this is too hard, I don't have time, and you're just never training? In those situations, it's about reflecting and thinking, okay, how can I make this work? Because this is becoming a pattern.
Yeah, 100%. I think it is so easy to avoid discomfort. And I think learning to enjoy or tolerate discomfort is something that takes work. And I think if you grew up in a sporting background, I see this a lot, like any client that has grown up playing elite sport, and because I came from an elite sporting background, that taught me how to push through discomfort, because you just have to get there and get it done from a young age. And like the coaches are yelling at you, like, keep going, like get another one up. Like the way that they treat you in those situations, I feel like you get so good at tolerating physical discomfort.
Yeah.
That's maybe a good thing, but it's also a bad thing on the flip side, because then it can be really hard for you to know when you actually do need to rest. So it might teach you that skill of pushing through, but I know that personally has also worked against me. And when I had like my whole adrenal fatigue issues, and every time I go and get tests done and my adrenals are much better now, but still show like signs of, fatigue, and like they're still depleted. I think it's something that takes forever to come back from. And my naturopath has always said to me, the problem with you is like you are so mentally resilient that you don't even realize like how exhausted your body is a lot of the time. So it's really hard to tap into that for people that come from that background. But on the flip side, if you haven't come from that background, I find a lot of people just as soon as something starts to hurt or feel hard, they want to stop.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you mentioned about it feeling normal for you definitely makes a lot of sense. And I had a client like this the other day when we were going through her blood work, and she had issues with dehydration, and she was struggling with fatigue and energy levels and digestion, all these things. And she mentioned it being not that bad. And I was like, okay, but when we made the changes and made everything feel better, she was like, actually, it kind of was bad because you do just get used to it being your normal. And I think when you are a high achiever, you have big expectations for yourself, it can be easy to, I guess, get used to functioning in a lesser state and pushing yourself when you maybe do need to rest. But on the flip side, as you said, if you are struggling to find that motivation, so to speak, especially winter months coming up where this is the time of year where things tend to dip, the New Year's resolutions are generally out of the window, people are actually having to use discipline. That's when your why becomes really important, and having that internal motivation, like why is it important to you to achieve that goal? And I have this conversation all the time with clients when they are struggling. Maybe they tell me that, I feel like I'm self-sabotaging. I have these goals for myself, but I'm just not following through with the plan when I know that I should, and I've made the time, but then I don't do it. Then I think, okay, let's step back and reflect, like, why do you want to do this? Like, why did you sign up to coaching? Why do you want to achieve this goal? Because if you just want to look leaner, generally that's not enough. Like, do you want to be healthier for your family? Like, do you want to be there for your grandkids when you're older? Maybe you have grandkids already and you feel like you can't keep up with them already. You need to have a bigger, more important reason that when motivation is low, when you're struggling to follow a program, that you can then lean on that and be like, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable, but this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not have said that better myself. And I think that, that's something I always harp on about as well, is that your why needs to go deeper than aesthetics, because aesthetics is not enough to get you to show up on those hard days. And I think when it becomes something that you do because of the way it makes you feel, or because you care about your health, it's even like putting good food in your mouth, right? Like, I am a sweet tooth through and through. I friggin' love chocolate and all of the sweets. Like, if I could eat sweets every meal of the day, I probably would.
Yochi was your death row meal.
Yes,
So.
yes. So, like, I love that stuff too, but I care so much about how I feel. I want to show up with like the best energy. I want to get the best sleep. Like, I also want to prevent disease. Like, I don't want to end up in a hospital sick as much as I can help it and control it. And that is why I choose to put majority whole foods in my body. Yes, I will still enjoy a treat, because I think you can absolutely still do that. But that is my why. And that is why I don't find it particularly hard to say no to certain food items, because that is my deeper why. And having your why, something like that, makes it so much more powerful. So if you're listening to this and you don't have a why like that, I encourage you to reflect on it, because I think it makes a big difference. I want to also go into, if you are feeling that you're lacking so much motivation and struggling to get up and go to the gym or whatever it is, a lot of the time we actually just need to look at, so what's your sleep like? Are you fueling your body properly? Are you getting even sufficient daily steps? Because not doing so can make you so lethargic, and sometimes not moving actually makes you really lethargic. So you need a circuit breaker there, because otherwise you're just so lethargic. A classic example of that, like, how many times have you been sitting on the couch, tired, and like, I cannot be bothered going for a walk right now, and then you get up, go outside, go for a walk, and then all of a sudden you've got this second wave of energy.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that as well, because I think a lot of people make that decision when they're in a tired state that they can't be bothered. And the same thing happens when you're like, I can't be bothered going to the gym. You go to the gym, you're like, that was actually a really good workout. Maybe I hit some PBs as well. Like, movement creates energy. So you can't make that decision when you're in that tired state. But I know that I always feel my worst if I have a day that I do absolutely nothing. And maybe I have like a really slow start and I've been on the couch a while and I'm like, okay, now I really can't be bothered doing anything, and I'm in that state. Whereas if I get up and I'm a bit more productive, maybe in the morning, and that's just a pattern for me, I find that for myself that I'd rather be productive in the morning, can get things done, and then maybe I can rest later in the day.
Yeah, 100%. I like as well, if someone is unsure as to whether they should go and train or move their body and they can't tell if they genuinely need rest or if they should, do like a 5-10 minute rule and go outside and go for a walk for like 10 minutes in the fresh air, and then see if you feel like, oh yeah, actually I've got some energy to go and train or to walk for longer or whatever that looks like, because most of the time you will. If you're truly sick and truly burnt out and need to rest, that will probably drain you, and you'll actually be like, nah, even walking was hard. You know when you're sick and you try and go for a walk, and
you're like out of breath.
Yeah. So it's like, it will tell you pretty quickly. So if you do a 10-minute walk and you actually feel better, it's probably a sign that, yeah, you can go and exercise.
Yeah, I always say the hardest part about training is actually just getting to the gym, and knowing that it's okay that if you do go to the gym and you don't push as hard, like sometimes just being there, ticking that box is okay. Like, for on occasion, not every session has to be to absolute failure PBs. Like, sometimes you are going to have those sessions where maybe you didn't sleep as well, maybe you're in your luteal phase, maybe you've had, coming down with something and the quality of your session isn't as good. That's okay. I think sometimes just getting there and testing the waters is important to develop that habit, because I've definitely had times where I've gone to the gym and I felt a bit crappy, and I've got halfway through, I'm like, nah, like I actually feel really crappy. Like, this is not a productive session. I'm feeling worse. And I've gone home. Most of the time though, you'll start that session and you'll feel better for it. And even if it's getting through at 75% intensity, you generally don't regret a session. I can't remember many sessions that I've done that I've been like, I wish I didn't do that.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said before, sometimes you surprise yourself and hit a PB. I think the only time that you really need to skip a training session is when you're sick, because then we need to rest. Outside of that, even if you're tired, even if you had a really poor sleep, if you can move it to another day, cool, maybe do that so it's a more productive session. Otherwise, maybe you just need to go and get it done and do exactly what Lil just said, which is take it a little bit easier for that session, because that's going to happen. And especially if you do compete, you're going to have sessions like that where you've had a really poor sleep and you just have to show up and get it done anyway. But I think that even if you don't compete, you kind of need to have that attitude, because we can't just wait for the perfect conditions all the time, because life's not like that. The reality is it's not always going to be perfect conditions.
Yeah, and one of my favorite tips, which I tell any of my clients that train early, especially I find the early trainers is the hardest, because it's like snoozing the alarm. I'm tired. No, I'm not going to go. I'll go tomorrow. And I always say, put your alarm away from your bed. So I personally, if I have an early morning, every single time I will put my phone in my ensuite so that I physically have to get up out of bed to turn it off, because otherwise I will snooze my alarm. I will waste time. And then, now I don't have time to go to the gym, whatever it may be. Or now I've got to cut my session short and that annoys me. So put your phone away from your bed. Then you're going to have to get up, splash your face with water if you need be. And sometimes that's the hardest part, just ripping that Band-Aid off, because it can be really challenging. Our bodies sometimes naturally don't want to get up at certain times if you do potentially need to get up at 5 a.m. if you're, a 9 to 5 worker and that's the only time you have to train. Sometimes it's going to be difficult to get up, but you just need to rip that Band-Aid off. And then once you're there, once you're moving, you feel fine.
Yeah. Also, I would say most mornings, like when I first wake up, most of the time I'm probably like, I'm groggy. Like I do not feel like training. And then once I've had like my coffee and my crumpets and I've had like a liter of water with my salt and my minerals and my lime juice to hydrate, because that's electrolytes, then I feel pretty good. We've got to remember we wake up in the morning dehydrated because we haven't drank anything overnight. Like once you actually get up and maybe have some caffeine and have some food and electrolytes, like you're going to feel a lot better, and then you'll be fine to go and get to the gym. So I think you've got to really not let your mood and how you feel dictate things too much, because more often than not, just getting up and taking action, that will change. What about comfort disguised as self-care? So what I mean by that is like the food choices, for example. So when we're like, but I'm just feeling like really tired and I just really want to maybe get this big like creamy bowl of pasta, or I stay home and like eat ice cream, or maybe it's not going to the gym because like it's cold outside, or you're sad and you just want to like cuddle up. What would you say to that?
I think that's a common thing, that when even the saying like I deserve a treat because you've maybe done something, and I think it's important to just ask yourself, like, does that align with my goals and what I'm trying to achieve right now? Because yes, you can absolutely have a creamy bowl of pasta on occasion, or maybe it's a one-off situation. But if this is becoming a regular occurrence, that's when we need to kind of stop ourselves and be like, okay, maybe like I've just had a huge day at work. Instead of going for the chocolate because that's comfortable, maybe I deserve some time in the sauna. Like I deserve some rest in a different capacity, or to like reward my body in a way that aligns with my goals.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that oftentimes we might associate a certain thing with comfort, but we can replace that with something else that's actually more productive towards our goals. So I feel like that really covers a lot of what it looks like in the sense of just getting up and getting things done regardless. What about the lack of discomfort tolerance? So people that really struggle with feeling uncomfortable, maybe it's in the gym and like the pain of lifting in the gym. What would you say to that?
I think it's just asking yourself how bad you want it, and remembering that, yeah, all good things are going to be difficult. And again, I say it all the time, but choosing your hard, like, is it, yes, it's hard to push your body to failure. Yes, it's hard to potentially follow a meal plan or a structured diet, or to maybe reduce alcohol during the week. But it's even harder to, be 12 months from now and be in the exact same or worse off position. It's also hard to be hospitalized because you've developed diabetes or, some diet related disease. Like there's worse off things. So trying to remind yourself about, which one would you prefer? And sometimes you do have to have those hard conversations if it's a recurring thing. Like, if you continue down this, with this pattern, you're going to be exactly where you are in 12 months' time. And how is that going to make you feel? Like, are you going to be happy with that? And if you are, like, that's fine. But most of the time, you're not going to be.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it is so important that we understand that there's going to be discomfort in everything, whether it's that we are choosing to show up for our fitness goals or whether it's that we don't and then we're uncomfortable in our body or we suffer with these health consequences. So choose your heart.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my favorite sayings as well is that discipline is the highest form of self-love, and you get so much satisfaction with, I guess, following through with the things that you said you would and the promises that you make to yourself. Like, it feels pretty crappy to say like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym on Monday, and then you get to Monday and you don't go, and then you're like, oh, damn, like I didn't do that and didn't follow through. Whereas if you make a promise to yourself that I'm going to gym on whatever day, I shouldn't say Monday because we don't just start on Mondays, on Wednesday, that if you do that and you follow through with it, it feels really good. And that then is where you build momentum, and that's when you can start to see results.
100%. And it doesn't feel good when you're not showing up for yourself. Like, that's when a lot of people feel like very like anxious or guilty, I suppose. And I truly believe that confidence actually comes from showing up in alignment with what you've said you're going to do and showing up for yourself and your higher self. It's not actually about how your body looks. It's about how you feel about your behaviors and your choices. So if we are showing up and doing the thing, even when it feels hard, like that is so rewarding. Like, think about the times where you haven't wanted to show up and you've gone and you've done it anyway. And afterwards you're like, hell yeah, I just did that. Like, I can do anything. Yeah. And that has such a powerful impact on everything else in your life.
Yeah, it builds that resilience and that delayed gratification. And that's also part of the reason why I and so many people love like comp prep experience as well, because you get to the end and a lot of the time you don't want to do the 60 minutes, 80 minutes of cardio at the end of the day. You don't want to do double sessions, or you are tired, it's raining outside and you have to go get your steps in. You don't want to do that. But then you get on stage and you're like, holy crap, I cannot believe that I just nailed everything, like every single gram for the last 20 weeks. I've hit every single session. I put everything on the line, and I, can safely say I've done everything I could to get on stage. Like, that is so rewarding, and it definitely builds your character.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously bodybuilding is such an extreme example, but I think even if you look at it, if you're not a bodybuilder, but you see that these people in bodybuilding can go to the gym twice a day, every single day, and like not miss a meal, off plan whatsoever in their prep. Like, I think you can get your 4 sessions a week done, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you can make it happen if you want to. You just have to want it bad enough. And I think that kind of comes back to that why conversation. Yeah. Outside of that, what are some practical takeaways that you think people can take from this episode if they are kind of stuck in that zone where they really struggle to differentiate between if they need rest or if they just need to get up and get things done?
Something I really like doing is scheduling gym sessions like their appointments in your calendar, especially scheduling in as if you're training with someone else, because we always tend to show up for other people. And if you have someone else there, it has that accountability of like, oh, I've got to train because I told Janet, I don't know who, Janet, that I was going to meet her at the gym to train. But as soon as it's for ourselves, we don't hold ourselves to that same standard. So if you need an accountability partner, grab one. If you need to schedule your gym sessions in like their appointments so that you're making that time, if you're someone who maybe struggles to, like the day goes on, you're like, I'll go to the gym later, I'll go to the gym later, another day's passed. So make sure you're pre-planning your week. That's going to be really helpful. And if you're struggling to find a routine, then maybe refining what you're doing as well, because that could come down to maybe you are setting the bar too high. If you're going from 0 to 100, maybe you need to strip back to 2-3 sessions and then build from there, especially if you are in a bit of a slump where you've really been struggling to get to the gym at all. Maybe start with 2 sessions this week. Let's build to 3 sessions the week after. Let's add on steps the week after, and reducing that pressure of getting everything perfectly, but aiming to start to build consistency.
Yeah, it needs to fit in with your life. Obviously, we did like a whole episode on that. If you guys want to go back and listen to that one. I think as well, like if you're struggling with this, making sure if you're not in a prep, can we put you in a position where you're actually eating enough and you're actually fueling your body well enough, maybe coming out of a deficit and seeing how your energy and motivation feels then? Because a lot of the time it's just a result of like chronic underfueling. And I notice this myself. If I have fasted for a day, or when I say fasted, not deliberately, but for example, maybe we're on a photo shoot or something, and so I skipped a meal or didn't get to eat for ages. If something like that happens to me, I feel absolutely rotten. Not just that day, but like the following few days. My body does not handle fasting well, and I know that. Anytime I'm undereating as a whole or undereating on even protein or carbs, I really feel that in my energy, and it makes it really hard for me. So let's remove that as an issue and as a barrier and see, how do you actually feel if you fuel your body properly for a few days? Like, do you kind of get that energy back? Because maybe it's just a consequence of doing exactly that, like skipping lunch or skipping breakfast. Like maybe that's impacting your energy ongoing, and that's making you feel unmotivated when you're actually just underfueled.
Yeah, I definitely find that that's sometimes a sign that I might need to pull a client out of a deficit as well. If we're getting to that point where maybe adherence is dropping, enjoyment for the process is dropping, that might be a sign that, yeah, we maybe need to either have a diet break or bring things back to maintenance. And it's also why a lot of the time, even when people sign up with the goal of weight loss, we might have a couple of weeks at like maintenance first, because if you're still trying to figure everything out, it can be really hard doing maybe a deficit on top of figuring out your gym routine as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think as well, if your workouts, if you're feeling completely cooked after you do them, so maybe 30, 60 minutes after you've trained, you feel gassed, you feel like you need to have a nap, a lot of the time that will be a sign that you actually do need to pull things back, or maybe just consider the intensity of your training. If you're doing a lot of HIIT, for example, it might actually be too taxing on your adrenals or your nervous system, and that's why you're feeling that. Like your workouts, once you finish your workout, you shouldn't feel gassed for the rest of the day. If you are, that's probably something wrong in either the style of training or maybe you need a deload. But I would say that's a little bit of a warning light that maybe your body does need rest or an adjustment to the plan at the least. Whereas like we should actually go and train and feel better. And that kind of comes back to that like 10-minute rule that I mentioned earlier on, that if you're a little on the fence, you're a little bit unsure, go and move for 10 minutes, see how you feel after that. And that should give you a pretty clear answer.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I feel like that has given people a lot of insight, and hopefully this has resonated with a lot of like the women that struggle to rest, because I know I used to very much be that person. It's taken me a really long time to identify like when it's okay to rest. I feel like I used to always need permission from somebody else. And I will say, I think that's a really helpful thing with having a coach as well, someone that can give you permission if you struggle with this, because it can be hard to self-identify if you need rest or if you need to push through. And that's what a coach is for. And that's why people often need coaches, to be able to be that voice of reason. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us on this podcast. I hope you've got so much out of this episode. And if you have, please rate and review it. It supports us more than you know. We'll see you in the next episode.